My name is Andrew Richardson, and there's a sound you never forget, the sound a door makes when it decides you no longer exist. In the first 8 seconds of this story, understand this: what you're about to hear was never meant for you. This is the kind of truth corporations bury, the kind that ends careers, the kind that rewires how a man sees power forever. It wasn't a beep. It was a verdict, a red light, twice. 8 years inside a building that trusted me with secrets worth more than cities, and suddenly I was a visitor. That's how it starts. Not with shouting, not with firing squads, but with quiet administrative violence. A badge that stops working. A smile from security trained to apologize while erasing you. Here's what most men don't understand about corporate life: nobody attacks you head-on. They suffocate you politely. They don't take your job first, they take your identity. Your name disappears from documents. Your office becomes a collaboration space. Your work becomes legacy. And overnight, someone younger, louder, smoother, someone who speaks PowerPoint instead of truth, stands where you once stood. Madison Hayes didn't raise her voice. She didn't insult me. She did something far more dangerous. She rewrote reality. A new VP, Stanford pedigree, consulting armor, 8 years of confidence without consequence. She walked into Apex Defense Solutions like a conqueror who believed history began the moment she arrived. And men like me, we were artifacts, tools to be rebranded or discarded. Understand this lesson early. In corporations, competence is tolerated, but control is worshipped. I built systems that protected the Pentagon from foreign intrusion. I wrote code that kept admirals asleep at night. But none of that mattered once the narrative changed. Because the real battlefield isn't the server room. It's perception, ownership, attribution. When she moved my desk, when she stripped my access, when she replaced my name with hers, she wasn't reorganizing. She was committing something far more profitable than theft. Fraud hides best behind confidence. And that's the moment I recognized the war had already begun. Not a loud war, a silent one. And men who survive silent wars don't react. They observe, they document, they wait. Because when someone tries to erase you, the only winning move is to let them expose themselves. Listen closely. This is where the descent begins. The annex was purgatory. Fluorescent lights buzzing like insects over gray cubicles, the smell of instant coffee mixing with anxiety, desperation seeping from the seams. That's where they put people they want invisible. Contractors like me, trapped between relevance and oblivion. My personal effects, photos of my daughter, commendations, stress balls, sat in a cardboard box, reminders that even legacy can be discarded with a bureaucratic signature. Most men would have panicked, would have stormed her office, lawyers at the ready, fury in their voice. But I had something better: time and observation. I had built the system. I knew its architecture. I knew the code and every hidden pathway she didn't. Madison thought she had erased me, but she didn't realize that ghosts always leave traces. I sat down, cheap rolling chair squeaking under my weight. My terminal unplugged, my digital kingdom apparently dismantled, but one truth remained. I could see her moves without being seen. Every version she edited, every keystroke she executed, every attempt to scrub my presence, I could track it all. And the deeper I looked, the more I realized the scale of what she thought she controlled. Madison Hayes was confident, charismatic, smooth, but dangerous. No, dangerous is a word for people who can anticipate chaos and bend it to their will. She was dangerous because she believed the system obeyed her. She didn't know the system obeyed me. She didn't understand that the very foundation she was attempting to hijack was built to resist erasure. Corporate revenge isn't about anger, it's about precision. It's not about shouting in conference rooms, it's about making the opponent step into the trap they don't even see coming. By the time she realized her errors, the data would speak for itself. And the narrative? It would be mine. The trick is patience. Watch the predators reveal themselves through overconfidence. Let them think they're untouchable. Let them believe the rules bend to them. Madison scrubbed my name, changed my code, reorganized my office. She was playing chess. I was playing 4D chess. And while she was smiling in boardrooms, I was listening. Every word, every phrase, every misstep. And in corporate worlds, every misstep is recorded somewhere, filed away, waiting to be weaponized. Now here's the part most people miss. Revenge isn't about humiliation. It's about control. It's about turning the hunter into the hunted without them realizing it. And in this game, I had all the cards. All I needed was to play them at the right time. And the time, I realized, was approaching. The first whispers of a plan began to form. A system that mirrored everything she did, a network of evidence she didn't know existed. A perfect reflection of every move she made. And as I watched, I understood the cruel truth. The higher someone rises, the harder they fall when the foundation beneath them is someone else's design. The annex wasn't just a cubicle. It was the cockpit of my revenge, and the countdown had begun. Power reveals itself in small behaviors. The way someone walks past you without eye contact. The way your name disappears from meeting invites before it disappears from payroll. Madison didn't need to say a word to announce her authority. The system spoke for her, restricted access, read-only permissions, legal emails written in soft language that felt like velvet over steel. This is how corporations punish men who know too much. They don't accuse you, they isolate you. I watched her presentation from behind walls thin enough to carry sound but thick enough to deny presence. She spoke in fluent abstraction, synergy, alignment, transformation, words designed to impress people who don't understand what they're approving. Admirals don't read code, they read confidence. And Madison had learned how to sell certainty without substance. That's when I saw it clearly. This wasn't just ego. This wasn't just ambition. This was systemic manipulation. She wasn't upgrading the Guardian protocol. She was laundering it. Every time she simplified technical weeds into bullet points, she stripped away accountability. Every time she replaced architecture with buzzwords, she widened the gap between reality and documentation. And in defense contracting, that gap is where fraud breeds. Here's the truth they never teach you. Fraud doesn't always look like stealing money. Sometimes it looks like stealing credit until responsibility collapses under the weight of lies. Madison wanted her name on a $1.6 billion system she didn't understand. Because in corporate hierarchies, authorship equals ownership. Ownership equals immunity until it doesn't. I didn't interrupt. I didn't correct her. I didn't defend my work. Because the moment you argue, you expose yourself. The moment you explain, you lose leverage. Instead, I activated something old. A logging mechanism buried deep in the compiler, originally designed for catastrophic failure analysis. It was invisible, silent, legal, every change mirrored, every edit time-stamped, every lie preserved in pristine digital amber. Men who have never built systems don't understand this. The best traps look like infrastructure. She thought she was erasing an audit trail. In reality, she was writing a confession, line by line. And the deeper she went, the more confident she became. Confidence is intoxicating in boardrooms. It's rewarded, applauded, protected, until the moment evidence enters the room. By noon, legal had made their move. Surrender credentials. End of day Friday. A clean execution. Textbook. Madison believed she had won. What she didn't know was that Friday was irrelevant because I wasn't fighting for my job. I was preparing to expose a system that had mistaken silence for weakness and mistook the architect for a disposable part. This wasn't revenge fueled by anger. This was revenge fueled by clarity, and clarity, once achieved, is lethal. By the third day, the building felt different. Not hostile, performative. People smiled too much, laughed too loudly. That's how you know fear has entered the ecosystem. When leadership shifts, the herd senses blood before the announcement ever drops. Madison floated through the floors like a victor on parade. She didn't look at me anymore. That was intentional. In corporate psychology, ignoring someone is the final step of domination. It signals to others, this man is already gone. What she didn't understand is that power doesn't come from visibility. It comes from positioning. I started mapping her behavior the way I'd map a hostile network. Inputs, outputs, decision points, vulnerabilities. Every executive has them. They just don't show up on org charts. Madison's weakness wasn't technical. It wasn't even ethical. It was structural. She believed hierarchy protected her. She believed titles outranked truth. And worst of all, she believed speed would save her. She rushed everything. Rushed documentation. Rushed approvals, rushed sign-offs meant for people who knew exactly what they were agreeing to. That's how billion-dollar frauds are born, not from malice, but from arrogance wrapped in urgency. I watched her override engineering objections with executive authority. I watched her reframe risk as resistance. I watched her replace subject matter experts with compliance-friendly voices who nodded on cue. And each time she did, the system logged it. Men don't realize this until it's too late. Corporations don't collapse from external attacks. They collapse from internal denial, from leaders who mistake silence for alignment. By Thursday night, I had enough data to reconstruct the truth in a way no lawyer could dismiss and no executive could spin. Version histories showing authorship theft, documentation inconsistencies that violated federal defense requirements, approval chains rerouted to avoid oversight. This wasn't just unethical, it was prosecutable, but I still didn't act. Because revenge isn't about speed, it's about timing. Madison wanted the spotlight, the naval research presentation, the admirals. The validation. She wanted to stand in that room as the architect of something she didn't build, so I let her. Here's a hard truth for you one most men learn too late. When someone is digging their own grave, don't hand them a ladder. I walked past her office that evening. Glass walls, lights on. She was rehearsing slides, refining language, polishing a lie until it shined. She looked powerful. She looked untouchable. And that's when I knew she was ready. Because the most dangerous moment for any executive isn't when they're questioned. It's when they believe the story completely belongs to them. And soon, very soon, that story was going to tell itself. Not in whispers, in records, in timestamps, in undeniable institutional truth. The kind that doesn't raise its voice and never asks for permission. Friday morning arrived with surgical precision. That's how corporations prefer their executions. Quiet, calendar approved, HR sanitized. My access was scheduled to die at 5:00 p.m. Madison knew it. Legal knew it. It knew it. Everyone assumed the story ended there. That assumption is why systems fail. I spent that morning doing nothing visible. No emails, no meetings, no resistance. From the outside, I looked finished. A man already processed by the machine. And that's exactly what I wanted them to believe. Because real leverage is invisible until the moment it's applied. Inside my private logs, the picture had sharpened. Madison wasn't just misrepresenting my work, she was rerouting budget allocations tied to optimization initiatives that never existed. Vendor contracts rewritten. Scope changes approved without technical sign-off. Performance metrics retrofitted to justify decisions already made. This wasn't ego anymore. This was a pattern that scaled. A pattern that explained how a $1.6 billion program could hemorrhage integrity while everyone applauded innovation. Here's something men in corporate life must understand. Fraud rarely starts with theft. It starts with narrative control. Once someone owns the story, they feel entitled to reshape reality to match it. Numbers become flexible. Definitions become fluid. Responsibility becomes abstract. And Madison was very good at abstraction. By noon, I had cross-referenced her edits against federal compliance requirements. The discrepancies weren't subtle. They were catastrophic. Any external audit would flag them immediately if someone knew where to look. Most don't. But I did. At 3:30 p.m., she walked past the annex one last time. She paused, smiled. A practiced smile meant to appear gracious, meant to signal closure. "Andrew," she said, lowering her voice, "I hope you understand this isn't personal. It's just how things evolve." That sentence tells you everything about modern power. When someone says it's not personal, it means they've already dehumanized you. I nodded, said nothing. Silence unnerves people who expect gratitude or anger. She walked away slightly unsettled, though she didn't know why. At 4:58 p.m., my credentials expired. At 4:59 p.m., I sent one email, not to Madison, not to HR, not to legal, to Naval Research Compliance. Subject line, architectural authorship discrepancy, Guardian protocol attached. Logs, timestamps, version histories, approval chains, and a single sentence in the body. This system is being presented under false attribution. The risk exposure is total. Then I shut the laptop. Men think revenge looks like confrontation. It doesn't. It looks like documentation delivered to the one authority that doesn't care about titles. And once that email left my hands, the machine Madison trusted so completely turned its attention toward her. The silence after you pull a trigger like that is always unsettling. No alarms, no immediate fallout. Just the illusion that nothing happened. Men unfamiliar with institutional power mistake that silence for failure. They think if there's no instant explosion, the move didn't land. That's how you know they've never dealt with real authority. Naval Research Compliance doesn't respond emotionally. It responds procedurally, methodically, like a slow-moving tide that pulls the foundation out from under whatever stands in its way. By Monday morning, Madison still believed she was in control. She walked into the office carrying coffee, joking with her assistant, rehearsing her talking points. The confidence was still there, but something had shifted. Meetings were postponed. Calendars changed without explanation. Executives started closing doors. This is how power retracts before it strikes. At 10:12 a.m., her assistant received a call she wasn't supposed to hear. At 10:27, legal requested an unscheduled document freeze. At 10:41, IT was instructed to preserve all version histories related to the Guardian protocol. Preserve, not review. That word matters. Preserve means something has already triggered. Madison didn't know it yet, but she had crossed the invisible line where explanations stop working. From that point on, every word she spoke could be replayed, reinterpreted, and used against her. And here's the part men need to understand. Once oversight enters the room, hierarchy dissolves. A VP becomes a witness. Confidence becomes liability. Charisma becomes noise. She came looking for me just after lunch. Found my cubicle empty. Annex cleared. Badge gone. Desk bare. For the first time since she arrived, Madison looked uncertain. Not afraid. Uncertain. Because uncertainty is the first crack in executive armor. Fear comes later. She sent me an email that afternoon, carefully worded, collaborative, warm. Andrew, it appears there may be some confusion regarding documentation ownership. Let's align and resolve this quickly. Align, that word is corporate code for I need you silent. I didn't respond. Silence is devastating to people who rely on control. When you don't answer, they're forced to confront the possibility that the narrative no longer belongs to them. By Tuesday, the scope widened. Finance was looped in. External auditors requested read-only access. Madison's name appeared in subject lines she wasn't included on. She was no longer directing the flow of information. She was inside it. And that's when the real punishment began, not with accusations, but with exposure. Every edit she made thinking no one would notice. Every shortcut justified by urgency. Every instance of authorship theft framed as leadership. All of it was now visible, immutable, indisputable. Revenge doesn't roar, it watches. And once the system sees you clearly, there is nowhere left to hide. By Wednesday, the building felt hollow, not quiet, emptied. Like a stage after the audience leaves when only the lights remain on to expose what was always there. People spoke in fragments. Sentences trailed off. Doors closed softly but locked firmly. This is the moment most men never witness, the moment when power realizes it's being observed. Madison was no longer leading meetings. She was attending them, taking notes, asking careful questions instead of issuing directives. Her posture shifted first, shoulders tighter, smile rationed, authority compressed into politeness. That's the transformation point. Here's a truth that will change how you see every office, every boardroom, every executive title. Power isn't removed. It evaporates. One procedural step at a time. Compliance doesn't accuse, auditors don't threat. They ask for clarification, and clarification is where lies suffocate. I was watching from the outside now, which is the safest place to be when the structure starts collapsing. Former colleagues texted me in fragments. Something is happening. They're asking about guardian authorship. Your name is back everywhere. Back, not as a favor, as a necessity, because systems don't care about politics. They care about origin points, and every thread led to the same place, me. Madison tried to control the damage. She reframed, claimed collaboration, spoke about team-based development. But the logs didn't reflect collaboration. They reflected replacement, overwrite, redirection. Intent doesn't survive evidence. By Thursday morning, the number surfaced. Not officially. Not yet. But whispers move faster than memos. $1.6 billion. That was the exposure, not lost money, misrepresented risk. The kind that ends careers, triggers investigations, and quietly rewrites futures. And here's where I stop the story for a moment, because this isn't just about me or Madison. This is about you. If you're still listening, you already feel it, that shift in awareness. The realization that workplaces aren't meritocracies, they're power systems. And once you see the machinery, you can't unsee it. So I want you to mark this moment. In the comments, type this phrase twice. I see the system. I see the system. Not for me, for you, because once a man names what he sees, he stops being manipulated by it. Back inside Apex, the final stage had begun, legal silos, executive briefings without Madison present, calendar blocks labeled external review. Those words are corporate last rites. She wasn't fired, not yet. She was being studied. And when institutions study you, they aren't asking whether you'll survive. They're determining how quietly you'll be removed. The dissent was no longer mine, it was hers. And the system she thought she controlled was now doing what it was designed to do, identify threats and neutralize them. When institutions move against you, they don't announce it. There's no confrontation, no dramatic fall from the tower. What happens instead is far colder. You're slowly cut out of relevance. Decisions are made without you. Rooms fill after you leave. Your authority becomes ceremonial, then optional, then inconvenient. Madison was still showing up to work, but she was already gone. Her access changed first. Then her assistant was reassigned temporarily. Then her calendar began filling with meetings she didn't schedule and couldn't cancel. Oversight briefings, compliance syncs, External counsel reviews, each one a small tightening of the perimeter. This is the part men never talk about, the psychological toll of losing control without being able to name it. No accusation to fight, no enemy to confront, just a growing realization that the system is no longer responding to you. She tried to regain footing, sent emails asserting leadership continuity, spoke confidently in hallways, laughed a little louder than necessary. That's how you know someone feels the ground shifting beneath them. Confidence, when forced, becomes a signal. Behind the scenes, the auditors weren't interested in her explanations. They were interested in consistency. They compared slides to code, budgets to logs, sign-offs to timestamps, and every comparison told the same story. The narrative didn't match the infrastructure. That's fatal in any high-stakes environment. Here's a lesson most men learn too late. The higher the dollar value, the less tolerance there is for ambiguity. You can sell vision at 10 million. At $1 billion, vision without precision becomes liability. By Friday, the question had changed. It was no longer who built Guardian. It was who altered the record and why. That shift matters, because once intent is questioned, protection evaporates. Allies become cautious, sponsors go silent. People who once praised you suddenly don't recall key conversations. I heard she asked about me, quietly, indirectly, whether I was still consulting, whether I'd be open to clarifying things, whether I understood the pressure she was under. Pressure is what executives cite when the story starts collapsing. But pressure doesn't fabricate authorship. Pressure doesn't reroute approvals. Pressure doesn't erase names and replace them with your own. Choices do. And the system doesn't judge emotion, it judges records. By the end of that week, Apex issued a hold on all Guardian-related communications. No presentations, no external briefings, no press. A $1.6 billion program froze in mid-stride. That's when the board noticed. That's when the phone calls changed tone. And that's when Madison finally understood something she should have learned much earlier. You can dominate people, but you can't dominate the truth once it's been logged. And now the truth had an audience far larger and far less forgiving than any boardroom she'd ever commanded. It was Monday when the first call came, not from Madison, not from legal. From a voice far colder than any HR representative or executive assistant, the federal compliance officer. Concise, methodical, no preamble, no politeness, just facts and deadlines. By noon, she was required to provide full documentation of every change made to Guardian with supporting timestamps, version histories, and approval chains. Every document, every log, every email, she was accountable personally, legally, and publicly. I wasn't involved in the calls. I didn't need to be. Once the system saw the discrepancy, the rules of corporate engagement were no longer hers to manipulate. The audacious narrative she had built, years of transforming processes, aligning teams and synergizing workflows, was now under scrutiny by authorities whose patience is measured in protocols, not politics. Here's what most men never see: authority without foundation is fragile. It cracks under procedural pressure, and arrogance accelerates the fracture. Madison had built her empire on confidence and obscured authorship. She had assumed no one would notice. She had assumed the bureaucracy was pliable. She was wrong. And this is the essence of corporate revenge. It doesn't roar. It creeps through systems, procedures, and oversight. It waits until the predator reveals the gaps in their own armor. Then it strikes, not with emotion, but with precision. By the time she realized the depth of the situation, the room for maneuver had vanished. Every email sent, every memo drafted, every version edited was now evidence against her. Her own tools, her own confidence had become the instruments of her downfall. Men often underestimate patience. They think retaliation must be immediate, loud, confrontational. They mistake volume for leverage, but silence, observation, and strategic positioning yield power that roars through outcomes, not words. By Wednesday afternoon, Madison had become a shadow, a presence without influence. Her meetings were monitored, her requests reviewed twice. Her reputation, carefully crafted through charisma and titles, now depended on document trails she hadn't controlled. Every time she tried to assert authority, she encountered the echo of her own edits mirrored back. And the most dangerous part? She couldn't fight back, not without implicating herself further. Every word, every action, meticulously logged by a system she thought she owned. This is what men must understand about corporate power. The higher you climb, the more vulnerable you become to exposure. Influence without accountability is a trap. And men who understand the architecture of the system, not just the titles and politics, hold the real leverage. By Friday, Madison stopped showing up, not because she was fired, not yet, but because she understood viscerally that visibility now equaled liability. And in that void, the architect of the system, the one she had tried to erase, was finally invisible and untouchable. The lesson is brutal. In the corporate jungle, patience is more lethal than rage. Observation is more deadly than confrontation. And sometimes, the quietest man in the room holds the power to rewrite history.